welcome everybody to the Winston Cup slash this time Chicken Foot Race Cast episode 2. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a joint race cast with Mr. Ace Petty on behalf of his league, Chicken Foot. So we'll be doing a little bit of both. We'll be talking about Winston Cup and then a little bit about his. And so let's jump right into it. So I guess we'll start with Winston Cup. Is there a little bit less to say, I guess? So I'll talk to Ace Petty because I believe you've been one of the longer members in our league. You didn't join exactly at the beginning of the season, but you were here for some of the earlier races. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about was we talked a little bit last episode about the growth of the league and how the quality of racing has really improved since maybe the first couple weeks till now. So I was wondering if you could give me a little bit of your take as how you've seen the league really grow.
I've seen a lot of growth, and I've had the privilege to run in all three series. So going way back when, I had to cut my teeth in the Xfinity series, and luckily I was able to get people on board with me going to Cup. And then from there I got to really see the growth of the league, eventually sticking up to Truck Series, which I joined. So there's been a lot of expansion, a lot of growth in even my time in the series. And it's really apparent because you can see that the rule book is continually adjusting to new personalities coming into the league, but also when there's new aspects of the game that are brought about in a race, leadership is quick to make changes and improve upon the rule book so that going forward races are a little bit more they run a little bit more smoothly. So in terms of leadership, I've seen great advancements, and also just from the past couple weeks where we see that there's been delegation of leadership throughout the various series. For example, Jersey Devil, who now has a major role in overseeing a race. So it's great to see that there's been an expansion in particular with the leadership of the league and adjusting to obstacles that come their way, and it's just shown that the league's been really strong, at least in my time there, but I'm sure time before that the league's just been strong and continues to get strong.
Yeah, for sure. I think, in such a competitive league, as you know, you've seen in some of the races, especially in the Cup Series, it gets very competitive to the point where people push boundaries. And I think that is a really big reason why we have had to keep adding rules, just because there's been situations where the league has never been before. Especially with having so many cars on the racetrack at one time, making sure that manual cautions follow correct procedures and everything, and who's doing what at the same time, because when you're trying to manage 16 cars is different from 4, so we've had to do that, and I think just everybody racing together for so long, people get to know each other and know how they race, and the quality has gone up. But I'm really glad to see the leadership come in, because at the beginning of any league, it turns out with somebody having an idea and then making the base decisions of how everything's supposed to go. But then eventually we've grown to the point where we're so large that we really need to have that leadership to run smoothly. So we're great to have people like Jersey Devil and Creech to help us with the Truck Series, and hopefully we can have somebody step up and help us with the Xfinity Series next season. So we'll see that. Uzi, what is your take? So you have been here since the beginning. You've been here since the preseason. So I really want your take. I think you remember quite fondly the race that we had at Kansas, the first preseason race, opening the season. From where we were then to where we are now, give us your take on, the difference.
Well, I didn't race in the preseason race at Kansas. I think I joined at Las Vegas, but the quality of the racing and really the drivers that have been racing have improved massively, as I've seen. As we've seen drivers like Creech come in and Swish, who's obviously raced in the league for a long time, who's been fast and had to deal with lag, but we've had a bunch of new guys come in that have really, I think, helped improve and grow the series, like you, Ace, because you've helped commentate and you've brung in new people as well. And you, Slide Jobs, since, obviously being the owner of the league, you've been able to bring in people, but, you know, the quality's gone up. I've raced with a lot of people that, know how to race that I haven't really, done in the NASCAR heat games, which, it's good to have fun racing and all that and have it be clean and not have so many cautions during certain races, which is something that, takes a lot of good drivers to be able to do in a league, which I think we have and I think will continue to grow. And I'm sure there's been bumps along the way, as we've seen, but, we continue to get better at handling more drivers, and I'm sure as next season and the seasons beyond that, it will be even better with more drivers.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems like when there's an influx of new drivers, there's always an adjustment period. I think recently in the Truck and Xfinity series, we received a little influx, as we did in the preseason, and I think both times there was a little bit of rough racing going on, and people just not, knowing how other people drive. So, every time we go up in membership, I think that'll happen. But
Yeah.
it's kind of evened out again, and I'm sure we'll get new members before the end of the season. So, they'll definitely have to deal with that. So now I want to move on. The second question of the day will be, so we are exactly just over halfway in the season. We just began our 16th week with the truck race at Kansas yesterday. So we had quite a bit of racing so far, quite a bit of racing to go. So I kind of want to hear, I'll start with Petty. Kind of want to hear what was maybe your favorite race so far, and what you think your worst race was, and why.
Well, I'll start off with my worst, and that was not long ago at Charlotte. And that's a race where, I've had not many more frustrating races than that one, where I showed up with a fast truck, tried catching Slide Job yourself as the leader, and nearly made the pass in the first couple laps, and then just kind of wound up having a mishap on one of the restarts, I believe, to the beginning of the second stage. So it was my worst race because of how frustrating it was. I mean, there's been races where I've come into the race where I was a little bit off, just in general, whether mentally or just the truck wasn't there, and I salvaged a good day out of it or an okay day. But when you show up with a truck as fast as I did at Charlotte and you finish outside the top 10, it's not a very ideal situation. But my best race is actually where I kind of went for it all and lost everything, but I was happy with the result, which was Watkins Glen. I finally found my way around a track and was able to be competitive and just tried to stretch fuel a little too long and ran out on the carousel. But I would say that was my best race in that I was that close to a top 3 and just stretched it a little too far.
Yeah, totally. I understand both of those. I think we've all had a couple heartbreakers where you have maybe your best car or truck of the day or the season, really, and then you go in and you just do not get a good result for some reason or another, and usually it's either a luck situation or another driver or something like that, and it's just so frustrating. But yeah, I think Watkins Glen was definitely one of your best races, because you had a top 5 car to begin with, and then you tried to stretch it at the end there to get the couple more positions, and it didn't pan out. But you definitely proved that you could take on, arguably one of the tougher racetracks on the circuit, because yeah, it's an easier to navigate road course, but because of how fast you can drive it, it becomes difficult because every mistake is magnified. So you definitely showed consistency and speed there for that.
Yeah, it's true. It was my favorite event that didn't pan out well. I would say my favorite event that panned out pretty well was finally figuring out the trucks around Eldora. I was able to check off a solid top 3 for that night. So that's where things finally fell into place, and it's become building on that ever since.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You definitely put on a show along with a couple other guys in not only the Open, but in the show itself. So that was really cool to see. All right, how about Uzi? So you tell us about maybe your favorite and your least favorite of the season so far.
I think my favorite would probably have to be Texas, because that was the first race where, I wouldn't say the first race, but it was the one race where I really felt like I could have actually won, because, we were up there with, I think, 20 laps to go. And, some cautions came out, and Swish was just ridiculously fast that night. So, things happen, but I was in the lead. I felt like, there's a chance I might actually win this race, But I spun out late in the race just from falling back, but I learned I could actually compete in this league for sure.
Nice. So you felt a little validated there, and like you felt like you finally are finding the speed to compete with some of the best drivers.
Right.
Nice. What about your worst?
Well, I'm sure you already know my worst. It was the Mid-Ohio Cup race, and it was
Oh yes.
one of my first ever races in this league, and I was just running it like I can't even explain. It was just a horrible experience for me, but a good learning experience just to know, like, this is not what I want to do in the league. I was off the track the whole time, spinning out, but I learned what to do at the road courses, how to drive them. And
yeah, and there's silver lining to that story.
Yep, we went back there for the Xfinity Series, and I managed to run top 5 all night, and I don't think I spun out once and got 4th. So,
Absolutely.
You learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a really good piece of advice for everyone in the league, including some of the guys that have won a couple races, because, everyone has a track that they struggle at. And it's not about how bad you do that day. It's about what can you learn from it going into the next season or even the next series. For you got an opportunity to redeem yourself, quite a few weeks later. I think it was like 9 or 10 weeks later. And, you put a hell of a performance. So you came back and showed the entire league that you weren't going to let a track beat you.
Yep, and I think that's one of the things that, in any type of racing league that I've raced in, I don't think I've ever really been able to do. So it's something I'm happy about. I'm glad that I was able to go back there and finally figure it out. I wish I could do it again in the Cup Series, but you know what? Life goes on, racing goes on, and I'm in a solid spot for the season right now. Yep, that's true.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Now that we've talked about the tracks and the races, let's talk about some drivers. So this is about the time during the show where we call out some drivers and hear from drivers about other drivers. So you might want to pull out your rosters. So I guess we'll start with Petty again.
That's not me.
No, JP, it's you. There it goes. So, actually, Uzi, it is you.
Oh, it is? Alright, well, I'll turn it off for a sec.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Alright, yeah, so Petty, we'll start with you. So, I want to talk about drivers that you've seen do well so far this season, and drivers that you think really need improvement. And then we'll flip that over to your predictions for the rest of the season. Who are drivers that you think are going to have a strong back half of the season, and who are drivers you think that are going to struggle? So let's start about so far. Who are a couple drivers that you think have really performed these first 15 weeks?
I'd say someone that came out of the gates swinging has been Creech. I've only known him for a couple of races, and I feel like Creech, regardless of what series he's in, is always finding himself up front, as he did with Kansas last night for the trucks. So he's someone that I've been watching pretty closely, and I've been actually trying to see if I can get him to run in the pro class for Chickenfoot. That's how much I've been watching him. But I think he's been a great asset, in terms of helping with the day-to-day management of the races along with Jersey Devil, but also he's just shown that he's strong in many aspects. So I've been really watching him since he joined in.
Absolutely, yeah. He's definitely been a topic of conversation the last couple of weeks because he does only run in one series, but he kind of basically took um, the truck series by storm, winning. Now he's up to 4 of the last 5 races, which is really cool. Or no, sorry, 3 of the last 5 races he's won. So that's really crazy statistic right there. And it seems like you said, every race he's been in, he's been running in the top 5. And I think the only thing that's stopping him, I think he's definitely got the speed. Is he really has made a couple mistakes in races, and I think if he cleans that up, he's going to be dominant. And definitely next season he's going to be hard to beat when he moves up to the Cup Series. So watch out for that. And what about a driver that you've seen has struggled so far?
I'd say a driver that's struggled, and I would say more of an element of consistency has been Mikey. For one, I've been trying to keep up with what name he is each week, but on a more serious note is I feel like he is someone that does have some pretty good skill. Mikey does find himself up front, but he is never really there at the end to potentially close the deal. I think his emotions get to him. And he's someone I really would like to see stick around because I feel like he would actually score some top 5s and maybe better if he stuck around. So he's someone that I know has the potential. I don't feel like he's exercising everything he has. So I'd say that's probably an element as to why I see him as a struggling driver.
Oh yeah, I agree with you too, because he definitely has shown he has the speed. He's won a race in the trucks and the Cup Series. Hasn't been able to find it in the Xfinity, but he's really fast at most tracks. But like you said, it's the consistency. I think he gets in a race and he knows he's fast, and he may get in traffic or something and is trying to make passes and makes one mistake and spins out or speeds on pit road, and he gets upset to the point where he thinks that his race is over and forgets about points and things. And I think he'd be in a lot better point situation has he not gotten that habit. Yeah, he's definitely, and you got to remember, he got that one Cup win, second race of the season. So it's been a long time since he's been in victory lane, and I think he has definitely struggled. So a lot more than we thought he would. So definitely good picks there. All right, Uzi, why don't you tell us a driver that you think has performed really well and one that has been struggling?
Well, a driver I think has performed really well is actually you, Slide Job, because in every single series since you've been racing from the beginning, you've put in wins, top 5s, top 10s. I think you have one of the best average finishes out of anybody, if not the best in this league. So, I mean, it seems like at every track you're always good at road course, the short tracks, the 1.5 miles, even at the dirt. Obviously, you dominated the All-Star race. So, I think that you've definitely been probably the best, if not one of the best drivers in this league, just in general, this whole season. And if you're asking me, you probably will be my championship pick. But then when it comes to a driver who I think is going to struggle for the second half of the year, I think I'm gonna have to agree with Ace. It's gonna have to be Mikey due to the fact that he has,
Hmm.
left some races at the end, and consistency has been a problem.
So,
But
so you're saying he struggled and is going to continue to struggle.
yes,
Got it.
I think that that's gonna
Nice.
just continue on. Maybe just a little bit of anger comes into play in the second half of the season and going into the playoffs. I think he'll be a surprise first round exit.
Got it. Well, that's a pretty insightful prediction, and yeah, I definitely, yeah, I would like to comment on that. We do so far, at least in the Cup Series, we do have the most top tens and most top fives. I think the number that's really the staggering one is we have 26 top fives, and the nearest one after that is 15. The top tens were close with a couple people like Brody and Boots and you yourself, and even Butter Burton. But the top fives number has really gotten us to the point situation we're in. Just being consistent. We don't always have the car to win the race. And I actually struggled, honestly. I struggled at the beginning of the season because it took me it sounds a little ridiculous, but it took me 5 races to get a win. And for me, I really was kind of annoyed by that because I felt strong and I had good cars at the first 4 races of the season, but it just seemed like it took a while to close the deal. And then honestly, at that race, I didn't have the fastest car either. It came down to somebody making a mistake on the last restart, so or on the pit stops actually. So it's been, but it has been a successful season. I will give you that. And Eldora was definitely one of our most dominant wins, so that was huge. Even though it wasn't worth any points, it was a huge confidence boost. But yeah, so let's move on. So yeah, so Uzi kind of gave me his picks. Petty, what about let's talk second half of the season. Who's a driver you think is gonna turn it on in the playoffs, and who maybe hasn't been so strong early, and who do you think has been really strong but will really struggle in the playoffs?
Well, I'm thinking someone that really cranks it in the playoffs and goes far is actually going to be JP. JP is someone that I've seen run a little bit longer than I've seen Creech, and Creech has been strong, but I have more confidence in saying that JP is going to be someone that goes the distance in the playoffs because he's a consistent driver. He's fast. He's strong. He asserts himself on the track, not to where he's overly aggressive, but you know when he's coming because he's usually coming in a hurry. So I know there was a couple races like Richmond where I had to quickly get out of his way because I knew that he was 10 times faster. So I think JP, no matter what track we go to, always brings something to watch, and I think he's someone that's going to go at least a couple rounds in the playoffs.
Absolutely, I think that's a great pick, and I think why that is so accurate, I think, is because if you like what you said, he's not very aggressive, doesn't take risks. He's a very conservative driver. He has a lot of speed, but he's very conservative, and I think that other than maybe Talladega, I think that will reward him greatly because the playoffs is not always going to be about who gets the win and gets moved on. I think it's going to be the driver that doesn't have a bad race, a driver that doesn't gamble and lose. I think it's going to be that driver that's always there but doesn't go outside of their abilities. So I think that's a good pick. What about somebody that's had a strong first 15 weeks but will kind of maybe fade away?
That's more difficult. I don't know. I'm gonna say, I haven't seen the same. I've seen the same speed, but have I seen the same consistency and strength in Jared? And it puts me in doubt. So I'm not really sure. So I think that might be one that I have more of, I'll say, of a question mark. then I don't have a sure feeling that he won't make it. But I can't say with the same confidence that Jared is someone that is going to be as consistent, especially when it comes to clicking off rounds in the playoffs. So that's when I have more of a question mark.
Absolutely. I think that's a good pick as well because as we've seen so far in the season, both Jared's wins were at road courses. He's been consistent. He was consistent early on for sure. But all of his real banner performances were at road courses. And if we look at the rest of the season, the only road course in the playoffs is the Roval. Of course, we have later on today, we have Road America, which he'll probably be strong at. But, I've heard from him that the Roval is definitely his worst road course, and he's going to have to survive 10 races of non-track, non-competitive road courses for him. So I think it's a very good pick. Whether he decides to adapt and really put his nose to the grindstone and really grab some good finishes remains to be seen. I know he'll be in contention there with all the playoff points he's gotten in the first half. Maybe for that fourth spot in the championship four. Who knows? I think anything is up for grabs at this point. So I think that's a good pick. So now that we're talking about the rest of the season, we'll go back to Uzi and we'll talk about the races for the rest of the season. So not just the playoffs, but the remaining four that we have. What is a race you're looking forward to, and what is a race you're not looking forward to? And this could be in all three series. It could be just Cup, whatever you feel like mentioning.
Well, I'll probably just start out with the Cup Series because that's the one that I'm most focused on at the moment. And I'll start with what track I'm least looking forward to, and it's got to be tonight. I have no practice on Road America at this moment right now. I've just been kind of feeling it out. I got one race in the Xfinity Series that didn't go to plan, but I hope that, with the experience at the road courses I've gotten, I felt like I'm getting a little bit better at running them. I think I have a little greater of a chance than I did maybe at the start of the season, but I still think that this and the Roval have got to be my worst ones, and this might actually take the cake instead of the Roval, as I've done some practice on the Roval, and it turns out I'm not as bad as I thought as I was there. But I don't know what it is about Road America, but I think it's got to be the long straightaway that's the hardest part for me, where you go all the way down there and there's not really a specific spot I know where to brake. And I think it comes off of like turn 3, and then you go down, and it's like a downhill area, and then I usually go off into the sand in that part and lose a whole lot of spots. But who knows, maybe a little bit of practice with things might, go better for me. But right now, that's my least favorite coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of those tracks that you mentioned are probably the two most technical road courses for sure. They really challenge drivers, just the elevation changes, the different corners, even the Roval with the chicanes. Those are always challenging. So definitely two you picked out that are kind of scary. What about what's one you're really, really looking forward to?
Well, I only figured this out a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually got to be Darlington, because that's another track where I felt like I could have won the race, where we were up there, I was leading laps, but just the bit of the debacle with, some people not hearing others, and a caution coming out, but we had to continue racing. It was just, a mistake that happens. It wasn't really addressed, but during that race, I really felt like there was a chance we could have won there. And I think it just has to do with keeping the car clean, being patient with the way you drive, and that's something I've had to learn over these league races, as patience. As I like to be aggressive,
Absolutely.
but you can't always be aggressive and take the big moves, as you'll probably knock yourself out the race doing that. But I feel
Yeah,
like Darlington's got to be one of the hardest tracks on the schedule for some of these drivers. So hopefully, I'll be able to take
absolutely.
advantage of that.
That's why I was a little surprised you said that. It makes me happy to hear that. Because Darlington, usually I hear a lot of drivers griping about, because like you said, it really is a track that, you need to have the most patience, maybe other than like Martinsville or Bristol, because, they're there's not a lot of, room to pass, and a lot of cars taking up, those two lanes. It gets hectic. So, and you're eventually gonna make contact with somebody. So at that point, it's gonna be a long day for you. So that's, really exciting. Plus, it's gonna be Throwback Day. So
Yep.
there's always that to look forward to. That'll be really cool to see all those different paint schemes. So, and we'll have those on the Facebook page as soon as everybody submits theirs. We'll have those on the Facebook page well before the race, so that'll be cool. All right. How about Mr. Petty? So you just transitioned to full time in the truck series. So why don't you tell me two races on the schedule that, you're looking forward to in the truck series, and one you're not?
Yeah, I'm looking down the schedule here for the remaining races for the Truck Series, and yeah, as you mentioned, that's my full-time gig now. Um, but I've been looking here, and I'll say I'm ready for some of the fast tracks. I'm excited about a Michigan. I haven't run that since last season of Chickenfoot, so I know it's been a while since I've been on Michigan, but I always liked the high banks and fast corners of Michigan. So hopefully something plays out there if I can make the truck loose enough to get around there, but not to where it's about to spin out. Talladega's one that always pops up as, the holy of them all, so that drivers from the back to the front or front to the back, anyone has a shot at winning, essentially. So I'm hoping that if not too many mistakes are played out on my end, that I could potentially steal a race like Talladega. So I wouldn't say Talladega is my favorite, but it's one I have circled on my calendar as maybe a potential upset if I can kind of play my cards right. And then one I think I might say is my favorite because of just the track itself is probably Michigan.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of those are very contentious races, definitely two to look forward to, especially like you said, the amount of drivers that can really capitalize. I think, and that's what kind of makes those exciting, because you won't know who's gonna win until they cross the line, pretty much. That'd be that'd be really fun. What about one that you're kind of, not looking forward to?
I never liked Martinsville. Like I'm looking at it now, thinking, what way can I call in sick? Martinsville is a very difficult track. It takes a lot of patience, and I know I'm pretty soft-spoken and normally mind my P's and Q's, but Martinsville is a track where I can get frustrated. And it's essentially it's a mental game, but it also is just how to get the truck slow down and corner, that many times for a race. Because I think it was Marcos Ambrose that said that Martinsville is like an oval road course because of how tight the corners are, how you have to get down and almost downshift, almost. But you have to get from such a high speed back down to a low speed and then hit the corner just right. So that phrase always stuck with me because it just shows how difficult Martinsville is, and it's not been a good one for me. And I've tried to find different ways to overcome it, but maybe I'll learn something this time, but I'm not looking forward to it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that one definitely, gives a lot of drivers a challenge. Plus, because not only is it a short track, but it's very flat. So, and you are carrying so much speed down into those corners. So, I think the name of the game, spoken from the guy that, did end up winning the cup race there. The name of the game is really consistency. You have to be able to hit all of your marks a couple hundred times. And that's not, it sounds easy sometimes, but it really isn't. You have to be focused every single lap. So it's definitely going to be, like you said, one of the more contentious races. A lot of bumping, a lot of banging, a lot of frustration. There was a lot of frustration coming out of the Cup race there. So, and I'm sure, if you checked it on the schedule there, being that it's in the last round of the playoffs before the championship race, there's definitely going to be a lot of drivers trying to get that last spot. So it's gonna be quite hectic. So, good pick. All right. So we're getting there. Yeah. So we got two more things on the agenda. One of them is the playoffs. So let's talk for the playoffs. So Uzi, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. So I would like, as far as the Cup Series goes, I'd like to hear who you think your picks would be for the Final Four going in.
Well, it's really, really difficult because we do have so many good guys that, good racers in this league that know how to get it done. But I'm going to have to go with you, Slide Job, Swish, Jared, and I think maybe a sleeper pick might be Dab King. I think Merkel might have some trouble in the playoffs, but I think Dab King, if he can get some speed, I've seen him run fast and get poles, so I think if he can finally get the speed down in the race and consistency, I genuinely think he could make it all the way, which, it's a stretch, and I'm sure that Merkel has a good shot if, the bad luck that I mentioned, doesn't hit him. I think that Dab King may actually pull a shock and maybe make it
Absolutely.
to Indianapolis.
And going along with that, let's good picks there. Let's take a look at the Cup Series standings right now. So just recently, it was announced that Boots to Asses has clinched a spot in the playoffs. So that means that's 8 spots taken and 4 spots left. So of the bubble drivers, anywhere from yourself all the way down to about, maybe Sparkly Marker, who of those guys do you think is going to struggle, and who of those guys do you think, do you think there will be any change in the order there, or you think somebody might just squeeze themselves in, or do you think that order will stay the same?
I think it will mostly stay the same, other than maybe Sparkly Marker or U-Ace, because Sparkly's a very fast driver as well, and I've seen that he can definitely put in results, and if there's one driver I think that will be able to clinch a spot, it'll have to be him, and that would knock Big Belly out. So, I think that it's going to have to be between whether one of those guys below the cut, like Sparkly, is able to win. Other than that, I think it's just going to stay the same, other than maybe a change between Brody and Butter, and maybe myself falling one spot. It all depends, though. It just seems like that it's just too much of a gap.
It's tight too, because if you look, you and Butter Burton are only 7 points apart, so that could change in a race. And as well, there's 9 points between Butter and Brody. Yeah, I think you really alluded to it. I think the guy really on the chopping block is Big Belly, because he does have an 87-point lead over the cut line, but anyone that wins below that line just shoves him down. And I think you're right there. I think Sparkly's probably the only threat right now, because Beast Hunter and Boost had just retired. You've got Chevy and Tev, who've kind of struggled early on, and Ace Petty retired out of the Cup Series. So it's really up to Troll Dog and Sparkly to try to get a win, and I think they're both capable of it. It's just going to be, we've only got 4 races left, so can they capitalize on one of these? I know Sparkly had a decent day at Road America, so we'll see there. And I'm gonna bother you one more time too, and then we'll go to Ace about the Truck Series. So let's talk Xfinity for a second, because you do both.
Yep.
So if you're looking at the Xfinity standings, first give me, who do you think the Final Four is going to be there, and then we'll talk about the rest.
Alright, so I think in Xfinity, it's going to have to be you again, Slide Job. I think JP will make it in Xfinity. Then
Hmm.
I'll say Liber, actually. He's shown some speed, and he's already locked himself into the playoffs.
Hmm.
And then I think
Yeah, one of our
that
new drivers.
Sparkly will make the Final Four in that one. I think it's going to be a little bit more,
Ah,
way different than
sitting
the
at
Cup Series
12th,
one.
and you. Interesting. Nice. Interesting picks. So yeah, you said that yeah, some of those guys up in the top there, they've got accumulated a lot of playoff points. What do you think about this cut line? Because there's a lot more drivers, a lot more competition here. About the same gap on the cut line. There might be. I think there's a heck of a lot of people below that cut line that have a lot of speed. So, what do you think the chances in the next four races of one of those bunch of guys taking a victory and shoving maybe Marker or Majesty out?
I think that the chances are extremely high, as my eyes just hurt looking at the amount of drivers that are below here, and there's a lot of guys that could and possibly will lock themselves into a playoff spot that are below. Like I said, Sparkly, this time he's on the cut line, like you said, about the same gap between the final spot to the people below. I think that the Dab King could bring home a win. We've seen Jared be fast all year. Cross Me Daddy's an interesting one because he was just able to pick up a Truck Series win, his first ever Winston Cup League win at Charlotte on, I think it was a last
Yeah,
lap pass on Mikey, I believe.
it
A very
was.
exciting race, and I think that he's got a lot of speed. I saw at Darlington he had an extremely fast lap in the Xfinity Series, which happens to be the cars we are talking about. And if he can show some speed, some race-winning speed like he did, I think that he'll have a good shot. And I think there's some guys down there like
Absolutely.
Merkel who could
You also
also
got Merkel,
get
yeah,
something. Yeah.
for sure. Okay, and last question of that series is so most of I'll ask Ace Petty about the trucks, but the Xfinity has quite a few new guys, and obviously, they're all pretty much in a must-win situation. Um, so, even if they don't make it, I'd like to hear maybe some of your top prospects for next year. Who of those new guys, pretty much that whole bottom of the list, um, who are you have some high aspirations for next season?
Well, I think Cross Me, like I said, I think he's definitely going to be a Cup driver next year. From what I've seen, he seems to be a quick guy, clean racer, everything that you really need to be in the Cup Series. I like Cheeseburger, actually. I think that he has some speed. Obviously, he's pretty young, around the same age as me, I believe, maybe a little younger. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. He's fast. He's got speed as well. Jersey Devil has taken, authority in the leagues now. He's, able to control the Truck Series and help lead that along with you and Creech. So I think
Hmm.
that with that being said, he may not be one of the crazy fast drivers, but I think that he'll be he's a nice guy and I think he could possibly bring home a win at some point. So I think that I've got high
Absolutely.
aspirations for him, and
Nice.
I've raced with Vicious Racer in public lobbies as well, and he's pretty fast and lean, so I think that once he gets more races under his belt, he'll be more of a contender.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'd like to shout out a couple other guys like Upcountry Bullet, and NASCAR Rock and Let It Esco, because a couple of those guys, I don't know if you remember, Let It Esco got second place in the Darlington race.
Yeah.
And those guys, I know they've been really working hard. They haven't had quite the finishes that they're looking for, but they are only a couple races into their Winston careers, so I think those guys definitely have a bright future. So I hope they keep racing with us, and can't wait to see what they're looking at soon. All right, Mr. Petty, let's talk Truck Series. So we looking at the standings here. I'm sure they'll change a little bit because we haven't issued the standings for Kansas yet. But let's look at this. Let's look at these standings real quick. So it is a little early, I know. The Truck Series has a couple more races than the other two do towards the playoffs, but looking long term here, who do you think the final four might be for the trucks?
Yeah, of course it's tough to tell at this point, but I'm gonna say my safe pick for the top four is Creech. I think he's gonna continue what he's doing in that series, so I'm gonna say Creech is my first seed. My second pick
Absolutely.
will be Slide Job. I think you've shown some strength in
Hmm.
that series as well from the very beginning, so I'm going to say that you're the second. I'm going to kind of skip a couple down, and then I'm going to say my third pick is actually going to be Cross Me Daddy. He has kind of come out swinging since he joined in, so I'm going to say that he is number three. And then a big
Absolutely.
surprise, I'm going to say it's the guy right on the cut line that's going to really start showing some strength is Jersey Devil. So I kind of skipped down a couple spots after the top two, but I think those guys are going to be the most consistent. And Jersey Devil, especially with him being part of the day-to-day operations in terms of management, he's going to, of course, be more enticed to be consistent for his responsibilities. So I think that's also going to play a role in the truck series is who's actually going to show up and who's actually going to race. So I think that's why Jersey
Absolutely.
Devil's going to come through. But also on top of that, he's also shown some pretty good strength in terms of his speed. But yeah, Cross Me Daddy's someone that's jumped out from the gate, and that's why I think he's going to be, I'll say, surprise pick too.
Oh yeah, he was definitely a shocker in that Charlotte race. He ran a very very smart race. He clearly didn't have the out the gate speed, but he was back there saving tires and fuel, and he was able to capitalize on people's mistakes and shockingly win that race. So, and he's only been in a few races so far, so that's huge. And look, I would say look at this cut line too, because the cut line is at 8. Who knows if we'll have two new winners, and even more so than that, because all winners get locked in. So there's always a possibility that we may not even have anybody to get on points. But we're looking here at people only 3 points apart, or a couple points apart farther back than that. So going forward, if you were to pick, who would you pick that could maybe shock the people at the top and either get a win, or how about the people on the cut line? Do you see those people changing?
I'm going to pick someone that I know fairly well, not too well, but his name's Ace Petty 43. I think he's someone that's actually, and I'll kind of speak first person now, but I think I'm someone that's going to, now committed to full-time for Truck Series. More of my efforts are going to be consolidated to one series, one vehicle, and I know I've had my ups and downs at tracks, but races like Eldora and the Charlotte race, although the circumstances notwithstanding those, but those races showed that I've also brought some pretty good trucks myself, and I know it's not going to maybe come next race, but maybe next race, but I know that there's a race out there for me. And as I've mentioned before, is I have a 2 calendar year losing streak that I would like to end, so I'm pretty hungry for a win. And at Kansas last night, I was kind of up there toward the end, but didn't save enough fuel for me to go all the way. I tried to see if I can get maybe a top 5 or better, and just kind of blundered that one. But as I get better with different strategies on how to get up there, and maybe one of my strategies might be just having the fastest truck, I think I might be up there to surprise some people.
Absolutely. And I honestly think looking at the standings, there's a lot of people I think that could win a race. You're definitely one of my top picks for that. But we've also got guys, just looking down the list, like Georgia Racer, who's brand new, and he's showing a heck of a lot of speed early. You've got guys like Sparkly Marker, obviously, who's been fast in the other 2 series. Libert, who's got a win in Xfinity. Even people like JP and Uzi and Merkel are even below the cut line. So I think there's going to be a lot of guys trying to vie for those wins and get up there. So it's going to be interesting to see. We might even have more than 8 winners. And at that point, everyone's going to be in a must-win. So it's going to be pretty interesting finish to this season. Can't wait to see it. All right, so we've gotten to our final part of Winston Cup, and we'll transition over to Chicken Foot in a couple minutes. But our last question of the day is we're talking about next season and maybe even the next race. I know we touched about Road America today, so we'll talk about the other two going forward. So let's talk about next race first. Uzi, how are you feeling for Canadian Tire on Wednesday? Because I know you talked about Road America, so let's talk about the Xfinity race coming up.
I think that Canadian Tire is going to be a good track to race at personally, and one I actually think I'm going to be pretty fast at. I don't know if I'm going to get a win there, because obviously JP and Jared, if they race, they're some of the fastest road course racers I've ever seen on any NASCAR game, and just in general, it just threats every week at the road courses. But we had a solid run there in the Cup Series, and we had I think it was a race for a gift card that JP held at Canadian Tire that I did pretty well at as well. So, we'll just continue to practice there, I think. The Xfinity car, I don't think I've ever raced it there, but I know that track pretty well, and I'm sure that I think I can bring home a top 5 that race.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it should be a really contentious race, because I know a lot of people in the Cup Series have seen that track before, and who knows what the newer guys are gonna bring. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see that one go down. So pretty cool. All right, Mr. Petty. So next week the trucks are at Texas. How are you going on your preparations for that race?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident about that one. I was actually looking at the schedule, and I realized that Texas is the next one. So, of course, I got up, fixed myself a drink, kind of just get in the mood for it. But, Texas is a lot like Charlotte, so I'm pretty excited to see if I can bring that similar setup. And, of course, I'll be tweaking on it over the next week to see what adjustments need to be made. But since the groundwork has already been done with the Charlotte truck, I think relays need just a couple fine-tunings to see if I could bring something just like I did to Charlotte. So notwithstanding any sort of trouble on restarts, I should have a pretty good vehicle for Texas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think you'll be very strong there, considering your performance at Charlotte. I think your 1.5 mile program has really progressed, so I think anytime we go to another 1.5 miles, you'll definitely be one to look at. So if you were to pick, and I'll get back to Uzi on the other one, but I totally forgot. If you were to pick, who's your favorite for the race?
I'd like to say me, but I'm kind of a long shot. But I'm going to say in actuality, it's probably Creech. I mean, he's someone that I've just been blown away about since he started. So I'm going to say, I'm a long shot. At least I hope I am. But who I'm probably going to have to beat is Creech. That's really what I'm focused on. So, if I'm ahead of Creech, I know I'm doing something right. So I'm going to say he's my mile marker, and he's probably going to be the mile marker for everyone else out there.
Absolutely. I think, especially the performance he's put the last couple weeks, I think he's the guy to really beat right now. So, very good pick. And Uzi, getting back to you, who's your favorite for Canadian Tire?
It's got to be JP. I mean, he's just quite clearly the fastest guy at that track. So, he's got to be my pick for the race. And
absolutely,
it'll be fun to race him.
What about today?
Oh, today. I'm probably going to go with Jared for today. I think that if he races, he'll be the favorite for today's race. I think that he's going to bring some momentum into the playoffs.
Good pick. So you're saying he gets 3 out of the last 4 road courses. That's safe pick. Safe pick. Nice. All right, so we'll end Winston Cup with, let's see, some predictions for next season. Or not really predictions, but things you'd like to see, things you're excited about. Just give us your take on what you're thinking about for next season. We'll start with Petty.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to hopefully next season get back to running each series. And unfortunately, my career's kind of taken some time away for me to commit to all 3. So I'm really looking forward to, for myself to continue to develop. So that's why I'm looking forward to next season in terms of getting into more races and just logging more laps. But I think as the league grows, I'm excited to see how each series begins next season, factoring in the growth that we've had this season. So I'm pretty excited for it all.
Absolutely. I think there'll be a lot of new faces. And then we did talk about that last week. The drivers that we had on, their main thing was new faces. Getting to see them on the racetrack in different cars and maybe even the Cup cars. So it'll definitely change the dynamic a little bit. So maybe for sure a little bit more competitive than it already is at that high bar.
Uzi, you're echoing.
But yeah, we'll talk to him next. So Uzi, tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to next season.
Well, I kind of go on what you kind of said. I'm excited to meet some of the new guys that'll be racing and really just get more of a, hopefully more wins and just compete, because I want to be able to compete the best I can and hopefully bring home some wins next year. But I think it's really just going to be getting more used to this league as this year's gone on. I think I'll be more prepared for league racing coming into next year. Hopefully, racing even more races, and maybe, for the trucks or the Xfinity Series, take some time off of that. Maybe commentate the races and get the Cup Series to be my main goal, because I want to hopefully be a championship contender next year and not just some guy that's running mid-pack and maybe get a top 5 every once in a while. I'd love to compete this year, but I know that right now I'm not at that level that some of those guys are on, so I'm going to make sure that I get to that level next year.
Absolutely. And by next season, you'll have been to every single track in at least 2 series, and
Yep.
whatever we've been to in the truck. So you'll definitely seen everything. You'll have some notes for next season. You'll be a little bit more prepared. Remember all of the tracks that you did good at and ones that you really needed to focus on, that you struggled with. So that'll be really good for next season. So good luck to you both. And at this point, we'll thank Uzi for coming and talking to us about the Winston Cup Series. And thank you for coming to Racecast Episode 2.
No problem.
All right, Mr. Petty. So now I'm going to turn this over to you, because I know all of our viewers want to hear a little bit about Chickenfoot and how that season is going.
It's a young season, but I'll kind of give I'll say a holistic view of Chickenfoot, because it's a funky name, but it also is a series that's had its quirks. So I'll basically explain it from the top. So Chickenfoot's a league that I've founded and have run for 9 calendar years. We're on our 12th season right now. We've always been, and Uzi, you're still echoing, by the way.
All right. I'll just include my audio real quick.
How about now? Okay, there we go. So, apologies about that. So, Chickenfoot has been around for a while, and we're actually kind of like a new old league in a way, because we ran on from NASCAR 2011 all the way till 2015. We ceased operations when NASCAR Heat 1 came out, and we did not bring operations back until NASCAR Heat 3. So we've been kind of playing catch-up. There's been leagues that have been long-standing that continue to run, so they kind of had a leg up on us. So, of course, we're kind of trying to get our roster back from years past, and some drivers have moved on. Some drivers are, we're trying to get a new influx of drivers at the moment. But, again, kind of going back to this season, is we just started early this month at Daytona, and this season is the quirkiest of all. So, the past couple of months, I try to put in as much as I can into this series this year to make it unconventional. And Slide, you've run in it last year a little bit and into this year, and I'm sure you've seen firsthand the quirks that I like to say of Chickenfoot. But I mean, I kind of want to get your perspective in a moment, but just kind of drill down is Chickenfoot is you know, what's interesting about it this year is it's all-encompassing with respect to each series. So it goes from Cup, Xfinity, Truck, and Dirt, but not different series. It's all within one. So we went back to our old name of the United Series because of using every series in the game. But it's actually basically you start off in the playoffs, and it doesn't eliminate drivers. It's basically where we're broken into 4 rounds. We do 6 races at the top, and then that's with the Cup Series, and then we go 6 races with the trucks, and then 5 races with Xfinity, and then 1 with Cup at the end. And the 2 special events are the Dirt Series. That's where they come in. So again, it's kind of like starting in the playoffs, but it's broken down. Instead of having a playoff system, it's broken down by class. So, for example, who's here in our party right now, Slapjob and JP, they're in the pro class, and there's 3 classes. There's the pro class, the top, in the middle, there's the semi-pro, and at the, I won't say bottom, but the up-and-comers are in the sportsman class. So it gives drivers a chance to align themselves with a class that they identify with in terms of their skill so that they can compete with drivers for a championship, because we're going to have 3 champions at the end. So all this, of course, more simply is found at seafoodracing.com for you to review, but I just kind of want to give drivers the holistic view if they haven't heard of Chickenfoot as to what it is, or if they look at my gamer tag and they see this weird chicken on the side, they say, what the hell's that? That's the logo for the league. But I kind of want to hear from you, Slot Job, if I can turn it to you for a second, because I know you've been in Chickenfoot since late last season and early into this, and you've kind of heard what I brought to the table. So I kind of want to hear first just kind of your general opinion of the league, and then I want to hear what of all the changes that you've seen so far and what you've seen for this season that you're most excited for.
Well, I absolutely love this league, and I think 2 of the major things that attracted me to begin with and have kept me loving it even today is one, that your league recognizes the talents of different drivers. So in Winston Cup, we have a different series geared towards different people. But I think the really cool thing about Chickenfoot is that there's different classes where drivers can really self-evaluate themselves and kind of race against drivers of a certain skill level, and they're still on the same racetrack, which I think is cool because you can race the drivers in your class, but you also have benchmarks. So if you're, say, in the sportsman class and you start running up with the drivers at the front of the pack and maybe even winning a race or 2, that kind of gives you a self-notification of, hey, maybe I should move up eventually, because and somebody who may over-evaluate themselves and they start in the pro class and they're getting killed every week and they realize, hey, maybe I need to practice, but I'm still in the same race, so I kind of know where they're at so I can improve my skills. And I think the second thing I love about Chickenfoot is that it keeps you on your toes more than any other league I've ever been in. Because our league, the Winston Cup League, it's very straightforward. You know the schedule. You know what to expect. Say you're only in the Cup Series. You're only practicing in Cup cars. You know how it feels and everything. But Chickenfoot mix and matches all 4 series, even the Dirt Series, into the mix. So you're not practicing in the same car on the same track any consecutive week. So I think, as for a driver like myself who likes a challenge, I think that's really rewarding for me because, racing is about being on the edge. So this kind of keeps you not comfortable at all. And I think that's what a lot of drivers express interest in, and that's what attracts them to Chickenfoot, because something like that, it's always new. Because I remember we started the season with Daytona Heats, which was a special event and which was really cool. I was going to get into that also, not just the varying series, but varying what the race looks like, because we went to Daytona And instead of having a traditional giant pack race where we have pitting and this and that, and then eventually people get rough at the end, we had these super high, intense, short heats, and then it was best of 4. So I think that was super interesting because, it's not realistic, and it's not like anything any of us had ever done. And we enjoyed it. We loved it. It was super fun. And then we go from that to the Cluck Clash, which was on dirt. I mean, from the, it's just completely different. And it's always driving me and pushing me to be a better driver. And Chickenfoot will always have a special place in my heart as well, because it was the league that I got really one of my first real league wins. And so that was last season at Eldora, which is a really special track to me now. And I was able to use some of those skills to win the All-Star race and Winston Cup there too. So, I personally love it for a lot of reasons. Those are a couple of them. I think there's a lot of reasons, and and off the top of my head, another one would just be the leadership and the hard work that Ace Petty puts into it. Because he has a well-organized and well-developed web page that has everything on it you ever need to know about the league, displayed really well. He updates all the stats and results relatively quickly. So he manages that and the races really well, and provides a really fun and exciting environment for the races. So, and even, like, sometimes even the way we qualify is being changed up with, I think he's got some ideas he can tell you more about with, like, roulette style qualifying and different things like that. So it's not even, you think you're not comfortable in the race, the whole ordeal is just exciting. So
Yeah, that's kind of what played into the development of our 12th season. Is I clearly had maybe too much free time over the fall and winter, because as you referenced, is each race does have an interesting format. There are some races that are, I'll say, the more conventional style, so there are some out there for those that prefer that, but there are heat races like Daytona and the special events that are heat races that include the roulette style, which I'll get into. But we haven't even gotten to the bulk of the schedule, which you'll see down the line is there's double points nights, like our Road America race tomorrow. Coincidentally, we're at Road America too. But we also have average races, or you'll see them as twin races, as they're called on the schedule. And that's basically where it'll, depending on the series, we'll either run 2 50% races or 2 25s. So if you look at the schedule, you see either 25 twins or 50 twins. That's referring to the distance. But essentially, that's a race where almost there's like a do-over provision, because if you have where your first twin race is not that hot, and I know offhand one is Michigan. So if you go into Michigan and something goes wrong, or you don't have a good run, you can come back for the second twin race and win. You won't have a perfect average, but it will basically make up for, in a way, it'll make up for your losses in the first twin. So it'll average out to a pretty fair night. And of course, if you go to back-to-back and you show you're consistent, then you're just going to have the best average of anybody. So, yeah, there's a lot of variety that's gone into making Season 12 as exciting as possible. So I'm looking forward to expanding the roster. I think right now we're at about 10 drivers in terms of getting off the ground, but we're definitely looking for a good inflow of drivers to show up and see what we're all about. But yeah, the roulette style I want to get into is because that's an example of where I try to make a gaming or arcadish style element of Chickenfoot become a reality, and that's where drivers show up for qualifying in an Xbox party and they bet on numbers, but it works backwards in that if your number's picked, normally you win in roulette, but in this case you get eliminated. So it's kind of quirky. You have to go through it to really understand it, but I mean, this is stuff that I just sat down and just thought of, whether it was at work, whether it was at home here, having a bourbon or two, and maybe that's where I got a little crazy with the ideas. But it's really where I just kind of tapped into my creative side of my head and just kind of came out with ideas, really not to just. I'm not nothing bad about fast guys, but fast guys always win, right? So I kind of have the mid-pack mentality, and I kind of say, what makes it enticing for someone that's trying to learn the ropes show up every week? And that's really
Or
what
even the
I
slow
get.
guys, yeah.
Right, and that's what I'm referring to. I try to avoid saying bottom or slow because, drivers everyone starts off somewhere, right? Everyone
Yeah,
at one point was
exactly.
like, how do you make this corner? How do you get around here? Everyone said that at one point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. I
so
try to say
I li-
rookie drivers, actually, yeah.
Right. So I always like to say the sportsman is the up and comers, and semi-pro. We're the guys like myself that been around for a while. We just got to work on a couple things and being consistent. And the pro guys are, well, they should be the cream of the crop, and so far they've shown that. But yeah, it's basically where I come up with ways to entice people that are still trying to work on their skills to have a reason to come out to the race. And I'll give you one example. It's just from the circumstances of the various qualifying methods. K-Hawk, who's someone that's been around for Chickenfoot for a while and's been working on his skills and so forth, he has back-to-back poles. So he's someone that now not only is that an achievement in itself in terms of points, but K-Hawk's someone now that he can start off the race with clean track in front of him and try to learn the track a little bit and maybe stay up there.
Without pressure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure's going to come eventually from the pro drivers, but he's going to have a chance to, first of all, feel what it's like to be out front, and then work on his skills being around people that are trying to catch up to him and race side by side with him, instead of, where the pro class takes off and he can't keep up with them. So those are one of the little ways where I kind of came up with an incentive for the other guys, I like to say. So that's who I look out for.
Absolutely,
as kind of
at Road America, too.
Yeah. So, and Road America in itself, if you've seen the post, our Road America is more of a shootout. So it's not like heat like first to four, but the stages make it to where it's only 2 to 3 laps at the end. So it's you're going to get a couple laps in and maybe a pit stop, but really you got to rev up that car for a last challenging 2 laps or so. So it's basically where, even if you're the fastest car, you got to get through that first corner. So that's kind of things I've kind of added into Chickenfoot this year to make it even more for not just the front guys, but for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think Road America, like you said, that K-Hawk's on the pole, at Road America, we've seen that, track position is a lot. I mean, you could be the fastest car on the racetrack and, be a pro driver or something and be all the way in the back and not be able to get through traffic, or, while trying to get through traffic, make mistakes. I mean, me personally, we're usually good there, and we've been stuck in traffic a bunch of times, and you make mistakes just trying to get past slower cars. So, it's really a chance for him to maybe even run away and get a really solid finish, or at least outperform all of the other guys in his class. And that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So,
yeah,
totally,
so I guess
I'm on board there.
Yeah, so I'll kind of just close my segment with saying, check us out. I put a lot of work into seafootracing.com, and that's where, like Slyjob said, that's where I put previous results. I put in our roster so you can see what cars are taken, or also the rule book. I mean, the rule book is several pages long. You can actually download it to view it on your mobile device. And also, the schedule can be downloaded on your mobile device. So you can actually pull up see when the next race is on your iPhone. So there's many ways you can kind of get involved and stay involved. So I definitely encourage you to pull up the website, navigate around, see the rules, see what's a little bit different, and reach out to me because I can kind of give you a high level as to the differences between most of the leagues you run in and Chickenfoot, because there is a learning curve between what's an accepted form of racing, and then Chickenfoot. They're different.
Absolutely. And yeah, so I'm sure some of you are interested, but I want to leave you guys with a cliffhanger. I'm not going to ask him this week, but check out next week's episode. I'm going to try to get Ace Petty to talk about where the name Chickenfoot came from, because I'm sure a lot of you are interested. So we'll save some goodies for next week. But yeah, absolutely. So I want you all, if some of you are viewing this and aren't in either of the leagues, or you are in Winston Cup, definitely check out Chickenfoot. They run Tuesdays at 7 Eastern. Definitely something to check out if you're interested. You can talk to Ace Petty or myself, and we can direct you to the right place. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. And if you haven't heard of us either, check out Winston Cup Racing League on Facebook, on Twitter. We also maybe starting up some other YouTube channel or something, but for right now, check out the Facebook and the Twitter. We run Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays, vary bunch of times. So yeah, check us out, and we will see you next week. So I want to thank Ace Petty again for coming and participating with us, and we hope to do a bunch more collaborative race casts between our leagues to keep everyone updated on what's going on and get some more drivers' perspectives. So we'll see what kind of special guests we can get on next week. But thank you, Petty, for helping us out and for telling us more about Chickenfoot, and we can't wait to hear more from you.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me to the show.
No problem.